Fine Air was scheduled to transport 40,000 kilograms of denim fabric to Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. The shipment of denim arrived at Fine Air's cargo terminal at Miami International Airport sometime after 3 a.m., at which point Aeromar, the company responsible for loading the plane, was set to load it onto a DC-8. The specific DC-8 was not at the airport at the scheduled time and had been reported as unavailable until the following day. This led to a decision in the early hours to switch to another DC-8. August 7, 1997, Miami International Airport, USA. It's just past noon in Florida, and here, a Fine Air DC-862 is waiting to depart for the Dominican Republic. Fine Air was a cargo airline based at Miami International Airport, from where it launched its first regular flights in 1994. Founded by businessman J. Frank Fine, the airline transported raw materials and other goods between South Florida and several destinations in Latin America, using a fleet of outdated Douglas DC-8s and one Lockheed L-1011 TriStar. Fine Air quickly became the largest of the many cargo airlines operating out of Miami, and in 1997, under the leadership of Fine's son Barry, the airline entered the stock market. This happened on August 6th, just one day before the flight we're covering today. During its initial public offering, investors purchased millions of dollars in Fine Air stock, a decision they would regret within hours. Fine Air had planned to transport 40,000 kilograms of denim fabric to Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. The denim shipment arrived at Fine Air's cargo terminal at Miami International Airport sometime after 3 a.m., at which point Aeromar, the company responsible for loading the aircraft, had scheduled it to be loaded onto a DC-8. However, the DC-8 in question, registered as N30UA, was not available at the time and was not expected until the next day. This led to a decision to switch aircraft during the early hours to another DC-8, registered as N27UA, which was set to arrive that night. Though similar, this aircraft had a different cargo configuration. Aeromar personnel weighed the cargo, and a Fine Air dispatcher used this data to draft the weight and balance sheet for the flight. However, the dispatcher was initially unaware of the aircraft switch. Shortly after learning about the aircraft change, the dispatcher recalculated the weight and balance, concluding that the load needed to be reduced by 454 kilograms to stay within the allowed maximum. He passed the revised numbers to a Fine Air employee, and everything seemed finalized overnight. Later that morning, an Aeromar loading team, assisted by a Fine Air cargo supervisor, began loading 16 pallets onto the plane. The DC-8 had 18 pallet positions, numbered from front to back, and the load sheet specified that positions 2 and 17 should remain empty. The loading team slid the pallets into place along floor tracks, starting at the back of the plane. However, they ran into an issue with positions 3, 4, and 5. On these pallets, the cargo extended beyond the edges, preventing them from locking securely into their respective positions on the floor tracks. After debating how to resolve the problem, the loading team apparently came up with a new plan. They removed pallets 3 and 4 from the plane, then pushed pallets 5 through 16 back one position, occupying the previously empty position 17. Pallet 4 was then rotated 90 degrees and placed in position 5, partially overlapping position 4. As a result of this rearrangement, positions 2 and 3 are now partially overlapping. 4 were left empty instead of 2 and 17, shifting the load toward the rear of the plane. Additionally, the instruction to remove 454 kilograms of weight was never carried out. The message was lost somewhere in the process. With this, the aircraft was now overweight and its center of gravity improperly balanced. Once the loading was complete, the flight crew arrived to operate the flight to Santo Domingo. 4 people boarded the aircraft. Captain Dale Thompson, 42, with 12,154 flight hours, 2,522 of which were on the DC-8. First Officer Stephen Petrosky, 26, with 2,641 hours, 1,592 of them on this type of plane. Flight Engineer Glenn Millington, 35, with 1,570 flight hours. And an Aeromar security guard assigned to the shipment. The pilots received a copy of the load sheet, and Flight Engineer Millington conducted the pre-flight checks. Although he was supposed to inspect all the cargo pallets, the disorganized arrangement in the cargo hold prevented him from getting past position 3. The change in pallet positions, which was not reflected on the load sheet, went unnoticed. At 12:35 p.m., Fine Air Flight 101 was cleared for takeoff from runway 27R at Miami International Airport. Moments later, the aircraft began accelerating down the runway.
knots. V1. Rotate. Easy, easy.
As the aircraft lifted off, it immediately adopted a pitch angle higher than normal. The captain quickly alerted the first officer, who tried pushing on the controls to counteract the movement.
Positive rate of climb, gear up.
But just seconds after retracting the landing gear, a deafening alarm blared in the cockpit.
What's happening?
Oh damn, I don't know. We're losing speed. Level it out.
Despite the first officer's best efforts, the pitch angle continued to increase, the speed decreased, and the alarm kept blaring. At this point, the crew seemed to realize there was an issue with the trim setting, and First Officer Petrosky began attempting to adjust the nose-down trim using the manual trim wheel. For a brief moment, the alarm ceased, but this respite lasted only a moment. The DC-8 lumbered past the end of the runway in an unstable attitude with its nose pitched high, flying at less than 200 feet above the ground, around 60 meters. The control column shaker stopped briefly before resuming almost immediately. The alarm sounded again, not just the stall warning, but also the proximity to ground alert. At this point, the extreme angle of attack disrupted the smooth airflow into the engines, causing the number 4 engine to surge violently, sending bursts of flames through the exhaust. A cacophony of explosions, ground proximity alarms, and expletives filled the cockpit. "What's happening?" shouted First Officer Petrosky. There was no time to answer. The ground loomed suddenly, rushing up to meet them with terrifying speed. Petrosky's final exclamation, "Oh no!" was the last sound captured by the cockpit voice recorder. With its nose pitched up 23 degrees and rolling 20 degrees to the right, the DC-8 crashed tail first into a field beyond the end of the runway. Nearby, in a small shopping center specializing in hardware and electronics, shoppers and drivers saw the aircraft descending and fled for their lives. The fuselage struck the ground and slid forward for 160 meters, crossing all 6 lanes of Northwest 72nd Avenue before coming to rest in the shopping center's parking lot. The shattered wreckage exploded on impact, creating a massive fireball that spiraled skyward over Miami's western business district. Emergency services arrived on the scene in less than 2 minutes, finding total chaos. People crowded the streets, wandering in shock, while firefighters battled the flames and tried to prevent them from spreading to nearby buildings. The fire engulfed the wreckage of the DC-8, along with at least 12 cars in the parking lot. It took 30 minutes to fully extinguish the blaze. Miraculously, no cars were driving through that section of the avenue at the time of impact. By sheer coincidence, the traffic lights on both ends of the street were red, leaving the avenue virtually empty. Unfortunately, not everyone escaped. Emergency crews confirmed that all 4 individuals aboard the DC-8 perished on impact. Additionally, a customer in the shopping center's parking lot who was sitting in their car also died in the accident. The material damage to the road, vehicles, and adjacent businesses totaled nearly $1 million. What had gone wrong? Was the small overload and improper cargo placement enough to bring down this DC-8? The National Transportation Safety Board NTSB investigators arrived at the crash site within hours and began piecing together the cause. However, a surprising discovery initially led them down an unrelated investigative path. The NTSB recovered 60 of the 85 latches that were supposed to secure the pallets, and 57 of them appeared to have been unlocked at the time of the crash. This suggested that the cargo may not have been properly secured and could have shifted during takeoff, causing the plane to pitch sharply. But interviews with Aeromar personnel indicated this was not the case. An analysis of flight data and the load sheet revealed that if the center of gravity, gross weight, and trim settings listed on the sheet had been correct, the aircraft should have been able to take off without any problems. When investigating the pilots, the NTSB found that none of them were stellar aviators. All had records marred by infractions and deficiencies. However, the cockpit voice recorder proved beyond doubt that they followed the specified trim setting, and no evidence was found that they had acted improperly. Attention then shifted to the load sheet itself. Through a series of interviews, significant discrepancies began to emerge. A communication error had resulted in the excess weight being removed from the load sheet, but not actually offloaded from the plane. Additionally, an interview with an Aeromar vice president revealed that the weight measurements of the cargo had not included the pallets or their packaging. New calculations showed that these errors had caused the plane to be significantly overweight. However, this alone would not have caused the crash, as simulator tests demonstrated that the aircraft could still take off normally, even when exceeding its maximum takeoff weight by 2,400 kilograms. Footage from security cameras capturing the loading process eventually provided the missing link. The video revealed critical details that the 2 loading supervisors had initially concealed from the NTSB during their interviews. The Aeromar supervisor explained precisely how the cargo had been shifted backward to make room for the oversized pallet, and claimed that the Fine Air supervisor had ordered the move. The Fine Air supervisor denied this, insisting he had never instructed anyone to move the pallets and placing the blame on the Aeromar supervisor. The 2, who had initially tried to remain silent, now threw each other under the bus. Although the security footage from the day of the accident showed the supervisors engaged in a heated argument, the video lacked audio, leaving the NTSB unable to determine who had actually devised the fatal plan. Calculations confirmed that it was indeed this shift, combined with the excess weight, that caused the aircraft to pitch excessively upward during takeoff. A review of the crashed aircraft revealed numerous unresolved mechanical issues and errors on the load sheet that were unrelated to the accident. Following the incident, the FAA inspected Finnair's cargo handling practices and found pallets and cargo improperly secured, cargo nets repaired with unauthorized materials, and a DC-8 with unrepaired floor damage that had been previously reported. Additionally, Finnair appeared to lack control over its loading process. Just 3 days before the accident, a pilot detected a critical center of gravity miscalculation, forcing a flight cancellation. The airline's operations showed signs of systemic problems. On September 12, 1997, the FAA and Finnair signed an agreement requiring the airline to cease operations until it could demonstrate compliance with a series of FAA mandates. As part of the agreement, Finnair implemented a program to provide formal training to its cargo staff, including theoretical lessons on weight and balance. Reviews were also conducted in many other operational areas. Finnair was eventually allowed to resume flights on October 28th. However, the damage had already been done. By the year 2000, Finnair filed for bankruptcy and was acquired by Arrow Air. Arrow Air itself was liquidated in 2010, erasing the last traces of Finnair from the industry. In its final report, the NTSB issued a host of safety recommendations aimed at preventing similar accidents in the future. These included training pilots to recognize and respond swiftly to incorrect trim settings, mandating FAA audits of all cargo operators to ensure compliance with weight and balance regulations, providing cargo supervisors with detailed checklists to guide the loading process, requiring airlines to offer formal training to their cargo employees, including instruction on the dangers of improper loading. Finnair Flight 101 remains a sobering example of how small oversights and miscommunications in cargo operations can have catastrophic consequences.